Okay, so in the last video, we talked about how Hermann Göring, who was then the Nazi Minister of the Interior, had met with the Grand Minister of National Lodge of Freemasons of Germany, and the law passed that it would recognize the Grand Lodge as follows, which fell with the creation of these new German Christian orders. Now, who's to say that Hermann, who was a Nazi Minister of the Interior, wasn't previously a Freemason and met with the National Lodge of Freemasons of Germany and passed this law so that they could infiltrate from the inside? Because even though I'm sure there were good Freemasons that weren't trying to do anything, I think they were onto something when Hitler was saying oh, the Jewish and the Freemasons, because he was associating the Freemasons with the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, and they control everything, so we need to get rid of them. But we didn't have to get rid of every Jewish person. We just had to get rid of that bloodline. So then he got rid of all the Freemason group and then changed it to this because he was a puppet in their game and they still got their way. So now they've infiltrated this in Germany. But they had to make sure they were taking over the entire world. Enter the Atlantic Charter between FDR and Churchill. I knew they were all connected. As we know, FDR was a Freemason, Churchill was a Freemason. Here is what the Atlantic Charter looks like, and the headline reads, Roosevelt Churchill vowed to destroy Nazi tyranny, praised, criticized in U.S. Oh my god, this was only 2 cents. Now, the Atlantic Charter was a joint declaration issued during World War II by the United States and Great Britain that set out a vision for the post-war world. First announced on August 14, 1941, a group of 26 allied nations eventually pledged their support by January 1942. Among its major points were a nation's rights to choose its own government, the easing of trade restrictions, and a plea of post-war disarmament. The document is considered one of the first key steps toward the establishment of the United Nations in 1945. From August 9 to August 12 in 1941, FDR and Winston Churchill met in naval ships off the southeast coast of the Newfound Land to talk about a range of issues related to World War II. It was the first time that the two leaders had met as heads of the respective governments, and at that point, the United States had not yet entered the war. It would end up joining in December after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The document that came out of those meetings was the Atlantic Charter. The document, which wasn't a treaty, deemed it right to make it known certain common principles and the national policies of their respective countries on which they based their hopes for a better future of the world. Interesting. Sounds like the Freemasons. And in 1942, 26 governments signed the Declaration by the United Nations, which pledged their support to the Atlantic Charter principles.